The candlelight was meant to soften the edges, to make us look like the perfect family in a magazine. We were playing our roles, as we always did. The scent of roasted chicken, mixed with my mother's overpowering floral perfume, filled the dining room. My father, with his slow, practiced movements, topped off everyone's wine, while my sister Chloe animatedly described a new project at her design firm. I watched them, feeling that old, familiar knot tightening in my stomach. I knew this was all for show, the appetizer before they served me the main course, a request for money. But this time, the facade didn't just crack, it shattered. My mother placed her wine glass on the table, and the click was like a gunshot in the tense quiet. Her gaze shifted from Chloe's radiant smile to me, and her expression curdled into something cold and dismissive. Before we get into all that, do me a favor and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. "You're not even fit to carry her bag," she said. Her voice was low, but it cut through the room like a shard of glass. I looked at my dad, my last line of defense. He didn't say a word. He just offered a slight, deliberate nod, sealing her judgment. And Chloe? She just smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small, tight curve of her lips, but it was pure, unadulterated triumph. In that single moment, everything broke. All the years of being the silent supporter, the family ATM, the invisible one, it all coalesced into a single, sharp point of absolute clarity. My hands, which had been trembling slightly, became perfectly still. I looked up from my untouched plate, met my mother's gaze, and spoke into the ringing silence. "Then ask Chloe to pay your mortgage. You can call me Anna. My full name is Anna Hayes. I'm 29, and I'm an ER nurse at Northside General in Chicago. My existence is dictated by the 12-hour shifts, a controlled inferno of beeping monitors, the hiss of oxygen, and the constant thrumming anxiety of life and death decisions. I survive on stale coffee and the protein bars I find crushed at the bottom of my bag. Dinner is usually something microwaved, eaten while standing over my kitchen counter at 11 p.m., too exhausted to even sit. In my world, a decent shift means we didn't lose anyone we shouldn't have. A great shift means someone who was circling the drain gets to walk out and see their family again. I've held the hands of strangers as they drew their last breath, and I've been the first face a person sees when they claw their way back from the edge. In the ER, I count. My skills, my judgment, my very presence, it all means something critical. But at home, in the tiny, quiet apartment I struggle to afford, I'm just Anna. And at my parents' house, the place I grew up, I'm something much less. I'm a footnote. I'm the ghost in the family portrait. The evidence is plastered all over the walls. The main hallway, the first thing anyone sees when they walk in, is a shrine to my younger sister, Chloe. It starts with her kindergarten perfect attendance ribbon, progresses to a photo of her at age 8 in a sparkly skating costume, beaming after her first competition. Then there's the high school honor roll plaque, her varsity soccer captain photo, and the huge, glossy portrait of her crowned homecoming queen. Her degree in graphic design from a prestigious art school hangs in the most prominent spot, right beside a professionally shot headshot from her first job at a trendy downtown agency. Every minor victory, every single achievement, is meticulously documented and displayed like a holy relic. My life, however, doesn't exist on those walls. My nursing degree, the culmination of 4 years of caffeine-fueled all-nighters and emotionally draining clinical rotations, is rolled up in a cardboard tube in my old closet, stuffed behind a box of winter clothes. The Nurse of the Year award I received from the hospital is in my work locker. There isn't a single photo from my graduation. My parents were there, sure, but they said the camera battery had died. I distinctly remember my mother spending the entire reception cornering a family friend to boast about Chloe's upcoming internship. This wasn't some new dynamic. It was the bedrock of our family. Chloe was the sun, a blazing star at the center of our solar system. I was a distant, cold planet, useful for my gravitational pull when they needed something, but otherwise left to orbit alone. I remember our school talent shows. Chloe always had a solo performance. She had a nice singing voice, but more importantly, she had stage presence. She lived for the spotlight. I played flute in the orchestra, just one of many faces in matching black outfits. My parents would be in the front row, their video camera aimed squarely at Chloe. Afterward, they'd swamp her with flowers and hugs, gushing about how she was destined for greatness. They'd find me later, usually on the way to the car. "Oh, you sounded great too, sweetie," my mom would say, her eyes already glazing over, her mind elsewhere. It wasn't done out of malice. It was just the natural order of things. Chloe was the main event. I was just part of the crew. This pattern seeped into every aspect of our lives. When I was 17, my science project on antibiotic resistance in local soil bacteria won the state championship. I had poured months into it. I remember the absolute thrill when they called my name, the weight of the medal they hung around my neck. I rushed home, bursting to share the news. I walked in to find my mother in a full-blown panic. Chloe, who was 15, had gotten caught sneaking out to go to a party and was grounded for a month. The entire house was consumed by the fallout of Chloe's drama, her screaming, her crying, my parents' long, drawn-out lectures. My gold medal never left my pocket. The next day, the moment was gone, lost under the avalanche of Chloe's teenage crisis. Chloe was the artist, the socialite, the one with spark. I was the practical one, the steady one, the reliable one. These weren't compliments. They were my job titles. "Anna will figure it out," my dad would say when the Wi-Fi went down or the car made a strange noise. "Ask Anna. She's good at that boring stuff," my mom would tell Chloe when it came to things like taxes or reading a lease agreement. I became the designated adult of the family before I was even old enough to vote. I was the one who remembered anniversaries, who nagged my parents to pay their bills on time, who talked Chloe through her dramatic breakups. I was the fixer, the support beam, the solid ground that allowed Chloe to build her dazzling, unstable life. They didn't dislike me. I think, in their own limited way, they loved me. But it was a passive, functional kind of love. They loved that I was low maintenance. They loved that I was independent. They loved that I could be relied upon. They loved me for the services I rendered, not for the person I was. My own world, my fears about losing a patient, my secret passion for writing, my dreams of traveling, was a foreign country they never once expressed interest in visiting. They'd ask, "How was your shift?" And before I could even formulate a reply, they'd pivot to a funny video Chloe had posted online. So I learned to fill the gaps. That's what I did. When my parents needed a last-minute ride to the airport, they called me, never Chloe, because she was too busy. When the family dog got sick, I was the one who left a shift early to rush him to the vet. When a holiday meal needed preparing, I was in the kitchen chopping onions while Chloe held court in the living room, regaling everyone with stories about her life. I was the scaffolding that held up the beautiful structure of our family, essential during construction, but designed to be dismantled and hidden when the building was complete. For years, I told myself that it was a fair trade. Being needed had to be a form of love, right? Being dependable was a kind of value. I buried myself in my work in the clear, objective reality of the emergency room. In the ER, the rules are absolute. You follow the protocol, you read the chart, You act. Your worth is measured in your competence. There I was seen. The families of my patients saw me. They thanked me, their eyes filled with genuine gratitude. They cried on my shoulder. They learned my name. It was a cruel paradox. The only place I found the connection I so desperately craved from my own family was in the sterile, high-stakes environment of a hospital surrounded by strangers. It was a temporary solution, a bandage over a wound that had been festering since I was a child. I didn't realize it then, but that wound was about to be ripped wide open. The phone calls always began with my mother's voice, as sweet as saccharine. It was a tone I'd come to recognize with a sense of dread. It was her "I need a favor" voice. The first time it happened, I'd been a registered nurse for less than a year. I was finally earning a real salary, an amount that felt like a king's ransom after living on student loans. I was working every overtime shift I could get, trying to build a tiny nest egg. "Hi, sweetie," she'd started. That word "sweetie" was her weapon of choice. "How's my favorite nurse?" I remember standing in a grocery store holding a carton of milk and feeling a small, foolish blossom of pride. "It's going okay, Mom, just tired." "Oh, I know you work so hard," she'd cooed, a masterclass in performative empathy. Then came the turn. "Listen, honey, your father and I are in a little bit of a jam. The car insurance bill is due, and it's just a bit more than we budgeted for. We were thinking, maybe you could help us out, just until next month. We'll pay you right back." I froze. I had about $800 in my savings account. It was the most money I'd ever had. It was my buffer, my security. "I don't know, Mom. Things are tight for me too." The sweetness in her voice soured instantly. "Oh, well, I just assumed with your new job and all. We're so proud. We're family, Anna. Family helps each other out. We wouldn't be asking if it wasn't important." The guilt was a physical weight. It was the currency of our household, and I was perpetually overdrawn. I pictured their car being repossessed. I pictured the shame. By the time I hung up, I had agreed to send them the money, all of it. They never paid me back. When I brought it up a few months later, my mother feigned confusion. "Oh, honey, don't be so transactional. It's family. It all works out in the end." That was how it started. Just this once became a recurring theme. My savings account became their personal slush fund. At first, it was manageable. $100 for a high gas bill, $200 because the water heater broke. But the requests escalated. About a year into my career, my dad sat me down, wearing the same stern, disappointed face he used when I got a B in high school. "Anna, your mother and I are worried about the mortgage," he said, his voice grave. "With property taxes going up, we're struggling to keep our heads above water. We can't lose this house. It's our legacy." He paused, letting the emotional gravity of his words settle. "You live so simply. You don't have a family of your own. We think it's time you started contributing a set amount each month. It's the responsible thing to do." It wasn't a question. It was an order wrapped in the guise of fatherly wisdom. He made it sound as if I were a thoughtless teenager, and this was my chance to prove I was a grown-up, despite the fact I was already working 60-hour weeks and paying all my own bills. I was 25, and I was being guilted into paying my parents' mortgage. I said yes. What choice did I have? Saying no would mean enduring weeks of the silent treatment, of being called ungrateful and selfish. So, every month, a substantial chunk of my paycheck was automatically transferred to their account. I told myself it was my duty. Then came Chloe's emergencies, which were frequent and always manufactured. She was a freelance graphic designer, a career that apparently required a lot of expensive gadgets and a wardrobe to match. She lived chronically beyond her means. One month, she couldn't make her rent. She'd spent too much on a weekend music festival. She called me, sobbing, "Anna, my landlord is going to evict me. I can't tell Mom and Dad, they'll kill me." So I paid her rent. Another time, she maxed out her credit card on a designer laptop and couldn't make the minimum payment. My mother called me. "Chloe is a mess, Anna. You know how she gets. Her image is so important for her career. Can't you just help her out this one time? She promises she'll learn her lesson." I sent the money. The phrase "pay me back" was never uttered. It was always helping out. I was the responsible one, the stable one. I was the family's financial shock absorber. But you don't thank a shock absorber. You just expect it to do its job. My contributions were simply expected, absorbed into the family's finances as if they were a foregone conclusion. The cruelest part was the utter lack of recognition. I'd wire my father a couple of $1,000s to cover a dental emergency, a payment that meant I'd be eating ramen for the last week of the month. His only reply would be a text. Received. The very next day, my mother would call to complain that I hadn't visited. And did I have any idea how much that hurt their feelings? They could take my money, but they couldn't see the sacrifice. They couldn't see the extra shifts, the canceled plans with friends, the 10-year-old car I kept driving because a down payment on a new one was an impossible dream. My life was a landscape of postponed hopes. I'd see ads for trips to Spain or Italy and feel a sharp, painful yearning. But a vacation like that was equivalent to 3 months of my parents' mortgage. I'd browse real estate listings, dreaming of a small condo I could call my own. But a down payment was a fantasy when I was also paying for Chloe's car insurance. My apartment was a collection of mismatched hand-me-downs. My couch had a spring that would jab you in the back if you sat wrong. I was pouring my resources into maintaining their comfortable suburban life. The nice house, the new SUV, the dinners out, while my own felt stuck in neutral. I was living like a struggling student, even though I was an ER nurse with a more than respectable income. The math never worked. My paycheck would land, and I'd immediately carve it up, sending slices to my parents, to Chloe, to the utility company for a house I didn't live in. What was left for me was just enough to get by. I tried to frame it as love. I told myself this was what a good daughter did, but deep down, a cold bitterness was taking root. It felt less like family and more like a service contract, one where I was the only one paying the fees. I wasn't a person. I was a resource. A well they could draw from at will, without ever bothering to check if it was running dry. And the cost wasn't just my money. It was my future. The hospital cafeteria was buzzing with its usual lunchtime chaos. The air smelled of disinfectant and Salisbury steak. I was huddled in a corner, trying to choke down a stale salad. It was the 7th hour of a 12-hour shift that had started with a multi-car pileup and hadn't slowed down since. My feet ached, my brain felt like static, and all I craved was 10 minutes of silence. I pulled out my phone, looking for a mindless escape. I scrolled through Instagram, a blur of vacation photos and baby announcements that felt like they were from another planet. And then my thumb froze. The picture was almost aggressively cheerful. A brilliant turquoise ocean met a perfect cloudless sky. And there, right in the middle, were my parents and Chloe. They stood with their arms around each other, grinning. They were all tanned and radiant. Mom wore a big floppy hat, and Dad had on a loud floral shirt, looking more carefree than I'd seen him in a decade. Chloe stood between them, holding a cocktail with a little paper umbrella, looking like she'd stepped out of a resort brochure. They looked so happy. A perfect, happy family. The air was punched out of my lungs. I read Chloe's caption, "A much-needed family escape to paradise. feeling so blessed to have this time together in the Bahamas. Family escape. The words ricocheted around my skull. The cafeteria noise faded to a dull roar. I stared at the photo, tracing their smiling faces. They were in the Bahamas, together, as a family, and I hadn't gotten a text, not a phone call, not a single word. My first thought was a desperate hope that I'd somehow missed it. I frantically scrolled through my call log and messages, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nothing. I checked my email, my junk folder. Still nothing. A cold dread, so intense it was nauseating, washed over me. They hadn't just forgotten to tell me. They had packed their bags, driven to the airport, flown hundreds of miles over the ocean, and it had never once occurred to them to include me, or even to inform me. My colleague Jen sat down across from me, her tray rattling. "You okay, Anna? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't form words. I just angled the phone screen toward her. She glanced at the photo, then back at me, her brow creasing. "Oh, nice. The Bahamas. When did you get back?" "That's my family," I whispered, the words feeling like marbles in my mouth. "They're there. Right now." Jen's eyes widened with a sudden, dawning pity that was almost worse than the betrayal itself. I stood up abruptly, mumbling something about needing some air, and fled the cafeteria, my uneaten salad forgotten. I found an empty supply closet and locked the door, leaning against it as my knees started to give way. I pulled up the photo again, zooming in on their joyful faces. They weren't missing me. I wasn't an absent piece of the puzzle. The puzzle was whole without me. With trembling fingers, I called my mother. It rang and rang before she picked up, her voice light and distant. "Hi, sweetie. Is everything okay?" "I saw the pictures," I said, my own voice flat and alien. "From the Bahamas. It looks nice." I was trying to give her an out, an excuse I could cling to. There was a beat of silence. "Oh yes, honey, it's just breathtaking." Chloe surprised us. It was all very last minute. She was already constructing the narrative, painting Chloe as the generous daughter and the trip as a spontaneous adventure. Why didn't anyone tell me? The question was a raw whisper. Her sigh was a soft, condescending puff of air. "Oh, honey, we know how insane your schedule is. We didn't think you could possibly get the time off. We didn't want to bother you or make you feel bad for not being able to come." The excuse was so perfectly polished, so smoothly delivered. It was designed to sound considerate, like they were protecting my feelings. But it was a lie, and we both knew it. I thought of all the times I'd rearranged my brutal schedule for them, the shifts I'd swapped to be at my dad's bedside after a minor surgery, the weekends I'd given up to help them landscape the yard, the times I'd come over on my one day off to fix Chloe's laptop. I always made time. The idea that they didn't want to bother me was a profound, calculated insult. It was confirmation of my deepest, darkest fear. I wasn't forgotten. I was intentionally excluded. They had made a choice. As I stood there in that sterile, windowless closet, the truth hit me with the force of a physical impact. I wasn't their daughter. I was their utility. I paid for the stability that allowed for last-minute trips to the Bahamas. My money, the money I earned during those grueling shifts they claimed, made me too busy, had almost certainly paid for those plane tickets, for that beachfront resort, for the ridiculous little umbrella in my sister's drink. I wasn't a member of the family to be celebrated. I was the infrastructure, the plumbing that keeps the house running but is never seen or acknowledged. You don't take the plumbing on vacation. "I have to go," I said, my voice cracking. "Code blue." I hung up before she could reply. It wasn't a lie. An alarm had just started blaring down the hall. I wiped a single hot tear from my cheek, straightened my scrubs, and walked out of the closet. I had a patient to save, but something inside me had fractured beyond repair. The quiet resentment I had been nursing for years was no longer quiet. It was a raw, screaming wound. The illusion of family duty had been vaporized, and all that remained was the cold, hard fact of their betrayal. A month went by. The tans from the Bahamas faded, but the frost between my family and me lingered. I became distant, polite. I answered their calls but kept them brief. I stopped offering to help, and they, sensing a new and unfamiliar boundary, stopped asking. It was a cold war fought with clipped sentences and ignored texts. I told myself the distance was healthy, but a foolish part of me was still waiting for an apology I knew would never arrive. I ended up at their house on a Saturday afternoon, drawn by a lingering, toxic sense of obligation. My mother had called, her voice uncharacteristically strained, saying she needed help sorting through old financial papers for their accountant. I just get so lost in all these numbers, Anna. You've always been so good at this. It was the old script, and I, like an idiot, fell for it, thinking maybe this was her attempt at an olive branch. The dining room table was a disaster zone of paper stacks. Bank statements, old tax forms, crumpled receipts. The air smelled of dust and stale regret. I sat and started to sort, grateful for the mindless task. As I worked through a pile of mail from the past year, my hand stopped on a thick envelope from a major student loan provider. It was addressed to Chloe. Stamped across the front in bold red ink were the words, "Paid in full." A wave of genuine relief washed over me. Good for her. I knew her student debt had been a huge source of anxiety. I was about to put it in a pile for Chloe's records when I noticed it was a final summary statement. Curiosity got the best of me. I scanned the page, and my eyes locked onto a small box labeled Payment Source Account. And then my world went into a sickening spin. The account number listed was not hers, it was mine. The last 4 digits were seared into my brain from years of online banking. There it was, in black and white, tying my bank account to her debt. It had to be a mistake, a typo. But my heart had already started a frantic, sick drumbeat against my ribs. I kept my voice eerily calm, a skill I'd perfected in the ER. "Mom," I said, holding up the letter. "What is this?" She glanced over, her expression barely changing. There was no surprise, just a flat, mild irritation, as if I'd discovered a bill she'd meant to hide. "Oh, that," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "We finally got that taken care of for Chloe. Such a relief to have that weight off her shoulders." The word we hung in the air like poison gas. "We didn't take care of it," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I did. This is my bank account number. I paid for it." She finally set down her papers and gave me a weary, condescending look. "Anna, don't be so dramatic. Of course we used your account. Chloe was so stressed about that debt. It was holding her back. You're stable. You have that good hospital job. You could afford it." The casualness of her confession was breathtaking. There was no shame, no guilt, just a cold, pragmatic justification. She spoke as if my salary, my financial security, my future were all just assets in the family's portfolio, to be moved around as she and my father saw fit. "You stole from me," I said, the words feeling heavy and foreign. "You went into my bank account, and you set up payments without my permission. That is theft." Her face hardened, the soft maternal mask dissolving to reveal something sharp and ugly. "That is a vile thing to say. We are a family. We support each other. You are being incredibly selfish, Anna." There it was, the S word, their ultimate weapon, the one that had always been able to reduce me to a puddle of guilt. For my entire life, being called selfish was my kryptonite. But this time, it didn't even sting. It was like a BB pellet hitting a brick wall. The Bahamas trip had been the first crack in my conditioning. This calculated, long-term theft was the sledgehammer that shattered it completely. The years of feeling used and invisible coalesced into a single point of cold, diamond-hard rage. That night, I went home and did what I should have done years before. I became my own forensic accountant. I logged into my online banking portal, a pot of acrid coffee brewing beside me. I opened a spreadsheet, and I started to dig. I went back years through every statement, every transfer. I was methodical. I made columns: mortgage, utilities, Chloe's emergencies, car repairs, medical bills, and a new, nauseating column: Chloe's student loan. For hours, I entered dates and numbers, watching in mounting horror as the grand total at the bottom of the screen climbed higher and higher. The automatic payments to the loan servicer were cryptically labeled EDUPAY, a detail I'd never bothered to question, assuming it was just part of the general fund of family support I was hemorrhaging. When I was finally done, the sun was beginning to paint the dark Chicago sky in shades of gray. I stared at the screen, my eyes burning. The number at the bottom mocked me: $52,000. It wasn't just money. It was the down payment on the condo I'd never buy. It was the trips I never took. It was the retirement I wasn't funding. It was a physical quantification of my family's complete and utter disregard for me. It was the price tag of being the good daughter. Seeing it there, in black and white, changed everything. The emotional pain I'd been drowning in for years now had a concrete form. It wasn't a feeling of being used anymore. It was a documented fact. And as I sat there in the pre-dawn silence, watching that number glow in the dark, the pain began to transmute into something else. It was no longer just anger. It was resolve. The victim was gone. A strategist was taking her place, and she was just starting to make a plan. The first step was both the easiest and the hardest thing I'd ever done. The day after I uncovered the full, staggering scope of the financial bleed, I walked into my bank. I sat down with a personal banker, a no-nonsense woman named Sharon, and systematically began to dismantle the financial prison my family had built around me. "I need to close this checking account and open a new one," I said, my voice steady. "And I need to put a stop on all automatic transfers originating from the old account, effective immediately." Sharon looked up from her keyboard. "Of course. Was your account compromised?" "Yes," I said, the word tasting like rust. "It was." An hour later, I walked out with a new debit card and a new account number that belonged only to me. I went home and spent the next 2 hours meticulously updating my actual bills, my rent, my car, my insurance. The only automatic payments I didn't reestablish were the ones to my parents' mortgage company, their power company, and the insidious EDUPAY that had been siphoning away my future. The feeling was both terrifying and liberating, like jumping out of a plane and trusting you'd packed your own parachute correctly. Then, I prepared for war. I went to a print shop and copied every bank statement showing a transfer to my family. I printed the paid-in-full confirmation for Chloe's student loan, using a yellow highlighter to circle my account number. I printed the spreadsheet I'd created, the final total of $52,117.45, glowing at the bottom. I organized it all in a slim black binder. It was my evidence, my declaration of independence. The first week was silent, the eerie calm before the hurricane. The call came exactly 9 days after I'd closed the account. It was my mother, her voice a sickly sweet performance of concern. "Hi, sweetie," she chirped. I just got the strangest email from the mortgage company. It says the payment was declined. There must be some glitch in their system. You know how they are. Could you just call them and get it sorted out? I took a slow, deep breath. In the past, this would have sent a jolt of pure panic through me. I would have apologized profusely and scrambled to fix it. Now, all I felt was a cold, clear calm. I don't think it's a glitch, Mom. A pause. The sweetness evaporated. What do you mean, honey? Did you forget to transfer the money? No, I said simply. I didn't forget. Well, whatever it is, you need to fix it. They're going to charge a late fee. Her tone was sharp, impatient. I'm sure they will, I said. The silence that followed was thick with her confusion and dawning fury. She wasn't used to this. I was refusing to play my assigned role. She hung up. 2 days later, my father called. His approach was all stern, patriarchal authority. Anna, your mother tells me there's some problem with the mortgage. This is not a game. You have a responsibility to this family. We depend on you. Hello, Dad, I said, my voice even. I am no longer paying your mortgage. The explosion was instantaneous. What do you mean you're not paying it? After everything we've done for you? The roof over your head? The food we put on your plate? Is this how you repay us? With this childish nonsense? I let him rant. Years of this had conditioned me to shrink, to feel small and worthless. But now, his words were just static. I could hear the panic for Fugbarkite, the anger. His power was built on my obedience, and I had just pulled the plug. I've paid for that roof over your head for the last 4 years, I said, when he finally paused to breathe. I think we're more than even. I hung up. The final call came that evening. It was Chloe. Her voice was a strange cocktail of annoyance and manufactured innocence. Anna? What is going on? Mom and Dad are totally freaking out. Can you just fix this? Whatever it is, I'm under so much pressure at work. I really can't deal with this drama. Her words, more than anyone else's, cemented my resolve. She couldn't deal with the drama I had been subsidizing so she could live her carefree, Instagram-perfect life. The drama that had only erupted the second the free money stopped. There's nothing to fix, Chloe, I said. What is wrong with you? She whined. Why are you doing this to us? Us? She had always seen the family as a unit of 3, Mom, Dad, and Chloe. I was just the off-site support staff. I thought of the black binder on my coffee table. I thought of the $52,000. The plan, which had been a nebulous idea, sharpened into crystal clear focus. Let's all have dinner, I said, my voice changing, becoming warmer, more conciliatory. Saturday night, at the house. We can all sit down and talk everything out. I could almost hear the relief wash over her. She thought I was cracking. They all would. They would assume their tactics had worked, that I'd come to my senses and was ready to crawl back, apologize, and turn the money tap back on. They would prepare their speeches, ready to welcome the prodigal daughter and her bank account back into the fold. Okay, she said, her voice brightening. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll tell them. When I hung up, I didn't feel angry or nervous. I felt a profound clarity. They thought I was coming to surrender. In reality, I was coming to deliver the terms of theirs. The house smelled of roasted chicken and a desperate attempt at civility. My mother had used the good china, the plates reserved for holidays, and lit candles that cast a warm, deceptive glow. It was a stage set for a play about a happy family, and we were all actors who had forgotten our lines. My father carved the chicken with a self-important flourish. My mother fussed over the wine, her movements jerky and anxious. Chloe kept her eyes glued to her phone, a small, nervous smile plastered on her face. They were waiting for me to break, to start the apology they were so certain was coming. I ate my food slowly, deliberately. I was in no hurry. The silence was my weapon. Finally, my father cleared his throat, setting down his knife and fork. This was it. "Anna," he began, his tone a practiced blend of disappointment and concern, "we need to talk. You can't just cut us off. It's not right. We are a family. We rely on you. This stunt, it's hurt us deeply." I met his gaze and held it. My silence unnerved him. He looked to my mother for backup. She picked up her cue flawlessly. "Your father's right, sweetie. We all have to pull our weight. Chloe's career is at such a critical point. The pressure she's under, we have to support her. When she succeeds, we all succeed. Your contributions help all of us by helping her." It was a well-rehearsed performance. He played the authority figure. She played the emotional manipulator. They were framing my financial servitude as a noble investment in the family's collective success, embodied by Chloe. I looked at Chloe. She finally put her phone down, her expression a mix of entitlement and embarrassment. "Mom's right, Anna," she mumbled, avoiding my eyes. "It's just a lot right now." I took a slow sip of water, letting their words hang in the air. I could feel their collective assumption that I would now crumble under the weight of their disappointment. It was a strategy that had worked for 29 years, but the person they were talking to was no longer there. My mother, sensing she was losing the upper hand, went in for the kill. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if sharing a sad but necessary truth. "You have a good, stable job, Anna. It's wonderful. But Chloe, she has real potential to be truly special. You have to accept that. Honestly, you're not even in the same league as your sister." There it was. The fundamental unspoken creed of our family, finally said aloud. In her mind, it wasn't cruel. It was a statement of fact. I was the sturdy workhorse. Chloe was the delicate, prized thoroughbred. You don't expect the workhorse to win the race. You expect it to pull the plow that feeds everyone else. Something inside me, the very last thread of hope that I had misunderstood them all these years, just snapped. The hurt didn't even register. All I felt was the quiet, cold finality of the truth. I set my fork down, the small clink servicios, a gunshot in the silent room. I looked at my mother, then my father, then at Chloe, holding each of their gazes, then asked Chloe to pay your mortgage. My voice was quiet, stripped of all emotion. It was a simple, logical conclusion. If Chloe was the superior investment, she should be the one to provide the returns. The silence that followed was a dead, airless void. My father's face went slack. My mother's mouth hung open. Chloe just stared, her eyes wide with disbelief. I reached down for the bag I'd brought with me. I pulled out the slim black binder and placed it on the table, right between the salt and pepper shakers. I slid it across the polished wood to the center. "What is that?" my father finally choked out. "That," I said, my voice still steady, "is a record of my contributions. I totaled it. Over the last 4 years, I have paid $52,117.45 to this family. That includes the mortgage you rely on me for, your utilities, Dad's dental bills, Chloe's credit card debt, and, of course, the full payoff of Chloe's student loans, which you handled by using my bank account without my knowledge." I let the numbers hang in the air. $52,000. It was tangible. It was no longer a vague concept like helping out. It was a figure with a dollar sign and a decimal point. It was the truth, printed in black and white, sitting in the middle of their perfect dinner. The illusion was about to detonate. The binder sat on the table like a time bomb. Lauren was the first to speak, her voice a choked whisper. She looked from the binder to our mother, her face a mask of dawning horror. Mom? Dad? What is she talking about? My student loans? Her eyes darted to me, pleading. I didn't know, Anna. I swear I didn't know they used your money. They told me they took out a home equity loan. They said it was my graduation present. Her denial, a genuine shock, was a twist I hadn't expected. I had assumed she was a willing accomplice. But seeing her now, seeing the betrayal bloom on her own face, I realized she was a pawn too. The pampered, favored pawn, but a pawn nonetheless. My parents hadn't just used me. They had lied to her, building her success on a foundation obstaculos my sacrifice and her ignorance. My mother's composure shattered. You are being theatrical and cruel, she hissed, her voice brittle. Families share, Anna. Your money, our money, it's all family money. We used it where it was needed most. No, I said, my voice cutting through her like a surgeon's scalpel. Families ask, families appreciate, they don't steal. You didn't share with me, you took from me. My father slammed his fist on the table. The china rattled. That's enough, he roared, his face turning a blotchy red. We raised you, we fed you, this house, this life, we gave it to you. Ungrateful, that's what you are. An ungrateful child throwing a tantrum. His anger didn't scare me anymore. His words, which once could make me feel worthless, now sounded hollow. Then why was I the one paying for it all? The question was simple, dispassionate. It dismantled his entire argument. If they had given me everything, why was I the one footing their bills? The truth hung between us, ugly and exposed. It was in my father's sputtering silence and my mother's furious glare. And it was in Chloe's face, which had crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked at our parents, truly seeing them for the first time. You let me believe I earned it, she whispered. She looked at me. You let me think you were just jealous. All this time you were paying for my life. The weight of her designer clothes, her downtown apartment, her debt-free existence, seemed to crash down on her all at once. Her perfect life was a lie. My mother tried one last desperate gambit. We did it for you, Chloe, so you wouldn't have to struggle. Anna is strong. She can handle it. You're more sensitive. But her words were poison. She had just confessed to a lifetime of calculated favoritism, of seeing one daughter as a tool and the other as a treasure. I didn't need to say anything else. I stood up. My legs were steady. The mortgage stops now, I said, my voice cutting through the room. The utilities, the credit cards, all of it. It's over. You're on your own. My mother gasped. My father, slumped in his chair, just shook his head, muttering, After all I've done. Chloe looked up, her face a mess of tears and panic. Anna, wait, please, she whispered. Don't go. We can fix this. I looked at my sister, the woman whose life I had unknowingly financed. For a split second, I saw a glimmer of the little girl who used to follow me around the yard. But she was gone. No, Chloe, I said, my voice gentle but firm. You can fix this. I turned and walked away. I walked past the hallway shrine to Chloe's achievements and felt nothing. The photos had no power over me. I heard my mother call my name, her voice high and pleading. I heard Chloe start to sob. I didn't turn back. My hand closed around the cool brass of the front doorknob. This was it. The click of the latch echoing in the quiet street was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The silence that followed wasn't a weapon or a void. It was mine. It was a space filled with nothing but the sound of my own breathing. I didn't look back at the house, at the warm squares of light where my family sat in the ruins of the world they'd built. They were not my problem to solve. I had walked out of the fire, and I had no intention of ever looking back. Leaning against my old car, I took out my phone. I opened a real estate app. a secret indulgence from weeks past. I changed the search filter from Chicago to Denver, a new city, a new start. As I scrolled through listings of small, bright apartments I could now actually afford, I realized I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry. I just felt light. I felt free. The weight of $52,000, the weight of a lifetime of being invisible, had finally been lifted. The reckoning was over. My life was just beginning. The first few months were a whirlwind of boxes, paperwork, and the quiet, electric thrill of starting fresh. I took a nurse practitioner position at a hospital in Denver. It was a promotion, more responsibility, and a salary that made me dizzy. $130,000 a year. It was my salary, all of it. I found a one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood with leafy streets and a coffee shop on the corner. It had huge windows exposition east, and every morning, the sun flooded my living room. I bought new furniture, a soft gray couch with no hidden springs, a solid wood dining table with 4 chairs, even though I usually ate alone. Every single piece was something I had chosen, paid for with money I had earned, and for the first time, kept. I didn't hear from my family. I had blocked their numbers and deleted their email addresses. But news, like water, finds its way through the cracks. My aunt, my mother's kinder sister, called one day to check in. From her, I received the epilogue. The house in Chicago went into foreclosure about 6 months after I left. Without my contributions, they couldn't make the payments. They were forced to sell and move into a small, rented townhouse in a dreary suburb. My father, stripped of the status his house provided, had become bitter and withdrawn. My mother, my aunt said, spent her days complaining about her ungrateful children. Chloe's life had also unraveled. Her wealthy fiancé broke off their engagement. When the family's financial implosion became clear, the illusion of her effortless success vanished. She had to get a second job, waitressing on weekends, to make ends meet. Hearing all this didn't bring me any joy. There was no triumphant "I told you so." There was only a quiet, sad sense of inevitability. Their downfall wasn't my revenge. It was a natural consequence. They had built a house of cards on my back. When I stood up, it fell. One morning, about a year after I moved, I woke up before my alarm. The sky outside my bedroom window was shifting from inky black to a soft, bruised purple. I made a pot of coffee in my clean kitchen, the smell rich and comforting. I carried my mug to my gray couch and watched a new day begin. The light crept across the room, touching my new bookshelf, my small collection of plants, and a framed photo on the wall. Not of family, but of me and a few new friends, laughing on a hike in the Rockies. In that quiet moment, watching the sunrise in a life that was entirely mine, I finally understood. Peace wasn't something they could have given me. An apology wouldn't have fixed the years of being made to feel small. My freedom wasn't in their ruin or their regret. It was never about them at all. Peace was the silence in my apartment before the world woke up. It was the taste of coffee I'd bought myself. It was the warm sun on my face streaming through a window in a home no one could ever take from me. It was the quiet power that came not from fixing them, but from walking away. It was the simple, profound realization that my worth wasn't determined by my usefulness to others, but by the fact of my own existence. I was here. I was whole. And for the first time in my life, I was more than enough.